Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Whitfield Report Thursday edition. I am recording this here at NGC Studios on Wednesday evening, but this is the Thursday show. Welcome to the program. I hope everyone is doing well. Contact info as usual. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at @SMD_NGC. You can follow me on Parler at Sam Whitfield. Gonna need to change that logo there in a bit. And you can support me on Facebook at Whitfield Report. TheSamWhitfield.com is my website. And of course, subscribe to the audio podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever else you'd like to get your podcast at. And also, of course, you can support the show directly by going to anchor.fm/Whitfield Report and clicking on the support this podcast button. Or you can go to streamlabs.com/The Whitfield Report. Folks, for those of you listening on audio, I'm doing a video version of the podcast as well, but it's still pre-recorded. Since it's Thursday and, my schedule for Thursdays now is kind of booked for, this semester, for the time being at least. At any rate, ladies and gentlemen, it's good to be back here. I missed Saturday's show. I actually kind of canceled it because it was Super Bowl weekend and, there wasn't really anything, I guess, newsworthy other than the game that was going on. Obviously, we had some stuff with the, coronavirus, which I covered on, last week's Thursday show, but there was no Saturday show. At any rate, there's a lot of stuff I want to cover. Some of it will be out of order, and you'll get what I mean in just a bit. But real quick, before we begin the program, I just want to give another shout out to my close friend, Mr. Luke Nicholas, who is he's been one of my best friends for close to 20 years now. We go back really far, and I want to give him a shout out because he sent me this beautiful new microphone, the HyperX Quadcast, for my birthday, and it is absolutely amazing. I've been using the Samson Q2U for a while, which is pretty decent, and then I was using the Yeti for years, and the sound quality on that has kind of degraded over time a bit, but I'm really liking this new microphone, and I kind of had to tilt my laptop camera a bit so it's in the shot, but I'm loving it so far. Tested it at last night, and the audio from it seems to be pretty well. So, my camera's not exactly straight on, but let me know if you guys like this angle or if I should change it to straight on. The bathrobe is not in the shot, but my closet kind of is, as is my bookshelf and whatnot, along with the comic book collection there in the background and my Eagle Scout statue in the background. At any rate, though, let's get on with the show. So I'm going to go out of order a bit tonight in terms of topics. I am going to talk a little bit about the Super Bowl and more specifically the halftime show, because there was some interesting stuff that went on there with that. But ladies and gentlemen, I have to jump ahead to some of more immediate topics that have come up this week. One of them I've tweeted a bit about yesterday and today, and I think for a lot of you guys who know me, you guys know what I'm going to talk about here for a bit. But Ladies and gentlemen, I find it very interesting that this year in 2020, this will be my 12th year of podcasting total come March. And up until this year, I've never really been autobiographical with my story. I have been a little bit in some instances, but this year really, for my birthday show, the Reflecting on 25 Years, that was the first truly autobiographical show that I've done. And, I know I said that would kind of be a one-time thing and that I wouldn't be talking a bit about myself that much on the show going forward, but God, I guess, has other plans, for me in that respect, in a sense. And part of that has to do with the origins of the program. So just to, get it out there. Earlier this week on Monday, Rush Limbaugh announced on his radio program that he has stage 4 lung cancer. I actually have a clip of this that I'm going to queue up for you guys to watch, and it's heartbreaking. And then I will kind of explain why the reaction, what kind of my reaction to this was, because this one was gut-wrenching for me when I heard the news. Now, the video quality on this clip is not great. Rush Limbaugh's actual video stream is in HD quality usually, but this was like a YouTube copy. The audio is good, so those of you listening on the audio podcast, this won't really affect you, but the video is, it's like 480p or something lower, but anyway, you guys will get the idea. Anyway, clip number 1, Rush Limbaugh announces he has lung cancer. Let's roll the tape. This is from Monday's Rush Limbaugh program. Clip number 1, roll the tape.
This day has been one of the most difficult days in recent memory for me, because I've known this moment was coming in the program today. Now, I'm sure that you all know by now, I really don't like talking about myself, and I don't like making things about me other than in the usual satirical, parodic, joking way. I like this program to be about you and the things that matter to all of us. The one thing that I know that has happened over the 31 plus years of this program is that there has been an incredible bond that has developed between all of you and me. Now, this program's 31 years old, and in that 31, there are people, you hear them call all the time. They've been listening the whole time. They've been listening 30 years or 25 years. Just had somebody say they've been here 3 years. But whatever, it is a family-type relationship to me. And I've mentioned to you that this program is, and this job, is what has provided me the greatest satisfaction and happiness that I've ever experienced, more than I ever thought that I would experience. So I have to tell you something today that I wish I didn't have to tell you. And it's a struggle for me because I had to inform my staff earlier today. I can't escape, even though people are telling me it's not the way to look at it. I can't help but feel that I'm letting everybody down with this. But the upshot is that I have been diagnosed with advanced lung cancer. Diagnosis confirmed by 2 medical institutions back on January 20th. First realized something was wrong on my birthday weekend, January 12th. And I wish I didn't have to tell you this. And I thought about not telling anybody. I thought about trying to do this without anybody knowing, because I don't like making things about me. But there are going to be days that I'm not going to be able to be here because I'm undergoing treatment or I'm reacting to treatment. And I know that would inspire all kinds of curiosity with people wondering what's going on. And the worst thing that can happen is when there is something going on and you try to hide it and cover it up, it's eventually going to leak. And then people are going to, why didn't you just say it? Why'd you try to fool everybody? And it's not that I want to fool anybody. It's just that I don't want to burden anybody with it. And I haven't wanted to. But it is what it is. And you know me, I'm the mayor of Realville. So this has happened, and my intention is to come here every day I can and to do this program as normally and as competently and as expertly as I do each and every day, because that is the source of my greatest satisfaction professionally, personally. I've had so much support from family and friends during this that it's been tremendous. And I told the staff today that I have a deeply personal relationship with God that I do not proselytize about. But I do, and I have been working that relationship tremendously.
So I just have to pause here, more or less for commentary's sake on the clip, fair use and all that jazz that YouTube requires me to do, even though I'm obviously here picture in picture. Obviously I'm okay now, but when I first heard this, I was moved. I mean, I choked up. Even now, just talking about it, I'm kind of getting emotional again. Maybe not, to the level I was on Monday when I heard this news, but this is another long-time listeners who have been with me for, probably like 3 years or more will know why this is such a big deal, for me. But I will explain for the newer listeners and for, the viewers in a sec why I'm so saddened by this. I'm a Rush fan, but it's so much more than that for me, and I'll explain what that is in a sec.
Which I do regularly anyway, but I've been focused on it intensely for the past couple of weeks. I know there are many of you in this audience who have experienced this, who are going through it yourselves at the same time. I am, at the moment, experiencing 0 symptoms other than, I don't want to get too detailed in this, what led to shortness of breath that I thought might have been asthma or, I'm 69, could have been my heart. My heart's in great shape, ticking away fine, squeezing and pumping great. It was not that. It was a pulmonary problem involving malignancy. So I'm going to be gone the next couple of days as we figure out the treatment. course of action and have further testing done. But as I said, I'm gonna be here as often as I can, and as is the case with everybody who finds themselves in this circumstance, you just want to push ahead and try to keep everything as normal as you can, which is something that I'm going to try to do. But felt that I had to tell you, because that's the kind of relationship I feel like I have with those of you in this audience. And I say it every Christmas, which is when I feel more thankful than at Thanksgiving. And I feel thankful at Thanksgiving, but Christmas, it really gets to me. But over the years, a lot of people have been very nice, telling me how much this program has meant to them. But whatever that is, it pales in comparison to what you all have meant to me. And I can't describe this, but I know you're there every day. I can see you. It's strange but I know you're there. I know you're there in great numbers. And I know that you understand everything I say. The rest of the world may not when they hear it expressed a different way, but I know that you do. You've been one of the greatest sources of confidence that I've had in my life. So I hope I will be talking about this as little as necessary in the coming days. But we've got a great bunch of doctors, a great team assembled. We're at full speed ahead on this. And it's just now a matter of implementing what we are going to be told later this week. So I'll be back here. I hope to be back on Thursday. If not, it'll be as soon as I can. And know that every day I'm not here, I'll be thinking about you and missing you.
So Rush announced that on Monday. Okay. So I mentioned briefly on my birthday special show, and I've mentioned this in the past, that Rush Limbaugh is a huge influence on me, as is Andrew Breitbart. They're the two biggest influences on me in terms of doing a show. But Rush Limbaugh, there's no other way for me to say this, and I'm not being hyperbolic or exaggerating at all when I tell you this. It may seem like it, but I'm not. I'm not exaggerating one damn bit. Rush Limbaugh is quite literally one of the reasons why this show exists currently. I mean, obviously, I've done the work and I've built the show, but Rush Limbaugh was the inspiration for me to first get involved in politics, and then, more ultimately to start a show. And when I was about 10 or so, as I've explained before, I was always a political junkie growing up. History and current events were my two strongest subjects. I went over that a bit on the birthday special. So I'm not going to rehash that. You guys can go back if you need to and watch that stream or listen to the episode, either or. What many of the newer listeners may not know is that when I was about 9 or probably like 8, 9, 10, um, along, those lines. Um, my parents were going through a really rough divorce, which I've mentioned before, and I don't want to go into that whole, mess, but that was what was going on in my life. But I tried my best, as any kid would have, to cope with that. And kids cope with grief and trauma in like really, weird ways, in some not so weird ways, I guess. um when I was about 10 or so and all that was going on, um my mother would pick me up from school and take me to various therapies throughout the week. And obviously, she would drive a lot. Now, because of her job, too, at the time, she was commuting, to, and from work a lot. This was after my, parents officially got divorced. And, so she had the car radio on a lot. And she had the car radio on a lot during the weekend, during the weekends, too. And I mean, she was listening to music, but she was always a fan of talk radio. Not just like conservative talk radio, but she would listen to NPR a lot too. So growing up in the car, more or less, going to different therapies, or going to Boy Scouts, or other activities I was involved in, or what have you, the radio would just be on. And like I don't know exactly when I started like consciously listening to it, but um, I started like listening to the radio like constantly at one point, because like I like she would tune into NPR a lot, uh, to hear what NPR was saying out stuff. And I think that like NPR would talk a lot about, current events and whatnot that I was talking about in school. And so I would tune it, I would listen to that. But to be honest, NPR like bored me as a kid, because the voices were very monotone and very robotic, and, very kind of swishy and dreamlike, like this, and a little bit snobby too. Um, very, very plain. And then I remember one day I think mom had picked me up from like school early, or something, because um, Rush's program is from 12 to 3 Eastern. But what some of you may not know is the Denver station, the Colorado station, actually would play like a replay of Rush's program from noon to 3, Denver time, Mountain Time. I don't know if they still do that, but I know like back in '04 and '05 when I tuned in, they did that. So, um, so mostly it would be noon to 3. I was in school, so I wouldn't hear, but every once in a while they would, um, they would do noon to 3 Eastern, and then actually do like the live broadcast in Denver. So I think that was actually earlier in the day. Maybe sometimes I would replay at night, but uh, anywho, anywho, regardless of when the live broadcast actually was, long story short, I remember I once heard um, Rush talking one night about American exceptionalism. Now, in school, I was like in fourth or fifth grade, and uh, at that point, I had a very, I would later come to find out, left wing teacher who, although she was great, she was still pretty far to the left. Not HJW level like, you know, professors are today. It wasn't bad like it is now. But she was very clearly, centered to the left, and she's. I remember at the time she was starting to talk about, all the various, mistakes that America has made, and how we're not that great of a country, and granted, America does have its flaws, but she never talked about like American exceptionalism. So I was never really like under the impression that America was a bad place, but I had at the same time, from what I can remember, like American exceptionalism, that whole idea was not in my lexicon yet. And then I heard Rush talk about American exceptionalism and Americana, and how America is one of the few places on earth where anyone can come from anything, and uh, you know, through grit and determination and through hard work, they can do whatever they want. And he was really energetic, and he was really just full of piss and vinegar, and uh, just overall having a blast talking about this. Very high energy. Rush has very high energy, folks. Not like low energy Jeb. Very high energy. Total energy. Very cool. But that high energy, like I remember hearing that, and I don't know exactly what clicked in me, but somehow, like even at 10, I knew that I wanted to be in radio. I wanted to be in media. I wanted to be in broadcasting. I mean, here was a guy, he was talking about America and what he loved about it. And he was getting like paid money to do it. And people were, listening to what he had to say, and he was having a blast. And, I felt I had a lot to say. And so, like, I knew deep down, like, someday I want to do that. And that was kind of the, impetus way back when. So then fast forward to when I'm 13, 14 years old, and the podcasting format becomes a thing, although it was very unknown at the time. Um, I That was like around the time when I was in like eighth grade, going into high school, when I mentioned that political correctness was going off it was starting to get bad in schools, and like I like I said on my birthday, I was just, I was getting in trouble. My friends and I were getting in trouble from, making jokes, towards each other and just being like, basically being like, rowdy, like, teenage boys. We were getting punished for that and, told that we were like, bad, straight white males. And like, by that point, like, I had kind of figured out, that I was like more conservative ish. So one day, like, I can't remember exactly what the incident was, but I was sick of the political correctness in my school. And so I came home and I had this headset mic at the time, and I got like this wild, I guess, hair on my ass to like do this podcast thing. And my first episode, like I was 13, my voice hadn't even cracked yet. It sounded like a kid. My very first episode was um, more or less, if I can admit this, it was more or less like a Rush Limbaugh. I wouldn't really say like parody because I wasn't like trying to, parody him or mock him, but essentially like my first episode, which, like I was just recording it for myself. Like I wasn't really recording it for anyone to listen to. Um, I basically just did like my best Rush Limbaugh, kind of impression slash rip off, but not really. And then I did another one because I was satisfied with it, and so on and so forth. And then it became a show, and people in my high school, by that point I was like a freshman in high school, and people started to listen to it. That was when I moved to Talk Radio, and for a long period of time, for like the first 2 or 3 years, like I'll admit my style was kind of a carbon copy of Rush Limbaugh because that was who I had become accustomed to listening on the radio, and then I discovered more hosts like Hugh Hewitt and uh, Dennis Miller, who I would later find out was an SNL host. Prior to that with Weekend Update, and I'll pull up my website here real quick because I do need to update my bio on this website, folks, because it's been a while, admittedly. But if you go to my website, thesamwhitfield.com, I actually have a bio page on there, and I say that my hosting style um, is a mix of Rush Limbaugh, Hugh Hewitt, Mark Levin, Dennis Miller, and others. The others would now include like Joe Rogan, since the evolution of podcasting has um, began. But, really, as I've said, Rush Limbaugh was the impetus for this program, and obviously I've kind of evolved and, made it my own thing now, in my later years, now that I'm in my 20s. But I started podcasting when I was 13 and 14 years old, and as I've said, maybe that was good, maybe that was bad, but I did it, and I will tell you something. Like I've tried to quit doing podcasting a few times intentionally. There have been like various moments where throughout the years where like the show wasn't growing, or I wasn't, or like I had a really bad show or something, and I thought about quitting, right? But something has always drawn me back to podcasting and the microphone. And I believe I've just always had the spark for speaking, and Rush Limbaugh really helped ignite that. Now, I know some members of my audience don't agree with Rush on everything. Some people think he's a gatekeeper or a neocon, which isn't true necessarily. Rush is kind of in a realm of his own completely, honestly. And so was Andrew Breitbart. I don't think you can really pin either of them down to any particular place in the lexicon, maybe other than being conservative, but even that definition changes every, few years. Like, I used to be considered, like, as I've said, I admit it, I had more neocon, tendencies when I was younger. Then I went more libertarian, and now I'm like somewhere in between. I don't really fit in the. I'm kind of doing my own thing, and Rush is kind of the same way, I believe. Um, you know, but the overall point here is, folks, is um, he is a huge, influence. He is the influence in me starting my program. You know, the basis, more or less. And so hearing this news breaks my heart. And I know that this is going to seem far fetched. And I'm hesitant to share this with you on air only because I don't want to jinx myself, but at the same time, I do want to put this out there in the ether. Because, crazier things have happened in my life. Me getting to interview Ben Shapiro was one of those crazy things. So, if it weren't for that, I might not put this out there, but like I said, crazier things have happened in my life. So, for whoever is watching this, I do want to tell you that one of my dreams, people always have dreams of meeting like their favorite celebrities or favorite public figures. And I've been extremely lucky to, interview Ben Shapiro, even though, even though I was never really, like, a big fan of his, I was more of a fan of Andrew Breitbart. But nonetheless, that was the closest I was going to get to meeting Breitbart, post his death. I've gotten to meet Larry Elder actually in person, who I also really admire. I got to, shake hands with the infamous Glenn Beck, who now obviously Beck is kind of cringe. I'll admit that he went like full never Trump. Uh, now he's kind of coming back, like back in 2012. When I was a teenager, like a bunch of us liked him. Maybe that was teenage ignorance. I don't know. But long story short, I got to meet him too. So I'm just putting this out there. Out of all the hosts I've wanted to meet, Rush is the one who I've always had a desire to meet with, or at least shake hands with, or even, like exchange emails with. And I've always wanted to send him to basically tell him my story of how he inspired me and how he inspired this podcast. Now, I know he has like the Rush 24/7 email. I've been a podcast subscriber of his for years. And I know that, I know that there's that premium email, but he also gets a lot of mail in that, I'm sure. Um, I'm sure he gets thousands of emails, and I know he doesn't have time to read every single letter. I, I get that. I totally understand. And I'm not, saying that for sure I would be the exception to the rule. But given how much of an influence Rush is, given the fact what I just shared with you, deeply personal about how he is the impotence for this show, I never got the chance to properly thank Andrew Breitbart myself for the influence he had on me. By the time I fully realized how influential Andrew Breitbart was, he was already gone. And with Rush's cancer diagnosis, I know that he's an optimistic guy, but he's also 69, close to 70. And well, the cancer diagnosis isn't exactly terminal. It's advanced enough to where it's not good. And I don't know how else to say this. I would just like him to know how much he means to me and how much of a unique impact he made on me. Because I know that among broadcasters he's a huge influence, but even so, as a millennial, I realize that I kind of am somewhat of an anomaly as far as his listenership goes. So, I don't know. I would just really love to, you know, exchange and actually be able to reach out and make contact with him and, thank him myself and make, something happen. I don't know if it's going to happen, but I'm putting that out there because crazier things have happened. The craziest thing that, could happen is if I could actually get him on the show. I'm not saying that that's what I want. I would be perfectly happy just to meet with him or even speak with him on the phone. Either of those two things have always been my dream, more or less. But if he wanted to come on this show and be interviewed, like, I would more than be willing to meet with him, to go all the way up to Palm Beach. I mean, I am here in Florida, so that helps, but I would be willing to make the trek up there somehow to, meet him and have the show there, if that's what he wanted. I know it, and I know it all seems crazy again, but I'm putting that out there. Because you never know. You just don't know. So, putting that out there, and if anything happens, great. If not, that's fine, and you guys now know the truth. Alrighty, folks, I am back. Apologies to the video audience for that transition, but I had to take a quick break. But I'm back now. So, I just shared with you what Rush Limbaugh means to me, and obviously I just shared, kind of my celebrity, meet uh, dream, I guess. Like I said, it would be my honor to meet Rush. Um, at any rate, though, I did watch the State of the Union on Tuesday night. Well, technically, since I'm recording this on Wednesday, that I watched it last night, I should say, or I watched part of it. I didn't get the chance to watch the whole thing, and I was actually about ready to go to bed um, right when President Trump mentioned that Rush Limbaugh was a guest of honor. And when he received the Presidential Medal of Freedom, I was just as awestruck as Rush was. And I have the clip of that too. That's in much higher quality than the video I played earlier in the program. But President Trump awarded Limbaugh the Presidential Medal of Freedom, which is the highest military honor that which is the highest honor that a non-military member can receive. Excuse me. Um, and I have Rush's reaction, and you can obviously tell that he is awestruck and honored and in tears. I've never seen the man in tears in all the years I've been watching and or listening to him. But this was really genuine and moving to see Rush's reaction and, President Trump's reaction. Nancy Pelosi, I'll get to the State of the Union more on Saturday evening when I cover the more political edition of the show, but Pelosi sat down through most of the State of the Union anyway, just because she's she's a bit of a bitch like that. But anyway, here is President Trump honoring Rush Limbaugh on Tuesday's State of the Union. Clip number 2. Let me find the video here and cue it up. And we're good to go. So this is President Trump honoring Rush Limbaugh during Tuesday's State of the Union. Roll the tape.
Almost every American family knows the pain when a loved one is diagnosed with a serious illness. Here tonight is a special man, beloved by millions of Americans, who just received a stage 4 advanced cancer diagnosis. This is not good news, but what is good news is that he is the greatest fighter and winner that you will ever meet. Rush Limbaugh, thank you for your decades of tireless devotion to our country.
Real quick, I kind of dig the fact that both he and Alex Jones are, rocking the bearded look now. I kind of like that. I've got to admit. So.
And Rush, in recognition of all that you have done for our nation, the millions of people a day that you speak to and that you inspire, and all of the incredible work that you have done for charity, I am proud to announce tonight that you will be receiving our country's highest civilian honor, the Presidential Medal of Freedom.
That is the expression of a man totally awestruck and humbled. And I imagine that was my face last night watching this as a long time Rush, as a long time Ditto head, and as a Rush baby, too. I should have mentioned that earlier, too, that I am a Rush baby, technically. What is a Rush baby, you ask? It's a millennial that was born and basically, grew up listening to Rush Limbaugh. Zoomers. That's what a Rush baby is. So.
I will now ask the First Lady of the United States to present you with the honor, please.
No wonder Nancy shredded the damn papers at the end of the evening. Not only is Trump doing great as president, but the man who the entire, left-wing establishment hates, this man, Rush Limbaugh, the most dangerous man in America, as the left ones used to call him. They still might, for all I know. Some of them still might. He just got the Presidential Medal of Freedom. And even with his cancer diagnosis, that honor can't be taken away. And people are like, well, why did Rush Limbaugh get that honor? He's just a talking head. I mean, Obama gave Obama's gave stupid recognitions of, people too. He honored that, he didn't honor Bill Ayers at the White House, although I was tempted to say, but Obama recognized his fair share of, radical leftists too. So I don't want to hear about, how dare Rush Limbaugh get the Presidential Medal of Freedom. He's still your president, and Rush Limbaugh is still the number one radio talk show host in America, terrestrially at least.
Rush and Catherine, congratulations. Thank you, Catherine.
So, as I said, wow. just a huge honor for Rush Limbaugh and for ditto heads across America like myself who have been listening, for all these years. And for those of us who have started our own media careers because of Rush. This was our moment last night, and I was honored to watch this. Now, I will be covering the State of the Union on Saturday in more depth, unless I may have a guest come on Saturday, but I don't want to announce anything yet because we haven't booked it. So unless my guest comes on, I'll be covering the State of the Union more on Saturday. But anyway, so folks, I know that the vast majority of this show has been dedicated to Rush Limbaugh and to some of the more serious stuff regarding his diagnosis and what he means to me. I get all that. I do want to go on to something a little bit more lighthearted and, pop culture wise. Kind of, just because it was the Super Bowl this weekend, folks. And neither of my favorite teams were in the Super Bowl, but I will say I did vote for the Kansas City Chiefs, even though they're not in my division. San Francisco is just such a liberal hellhole, and especially with like Colin Kaepernick being one of their players at some point, I just can't with them. So, the Kansas City Chiefs, I was kind of rooting for them. Even if San Francisco had won, though, I wouldn't have been upset. It was kind of like I went to the Super Bowl party in my neighborhood just to, have beers and socialize with my neighbors and just have fun. And some of you guys on Facebook, I know that you guys, some of you guys who follow me on Facebook, on my personal page, some of you guys know that I probably got a little bit schnockered on Sunday for the Super Bowl. And for those of you who are wondering what the brand of bourbon I had, some of you guys sent me DMs on Facebook Messenger regarding that. Some of you guys even used the website contact form on my website to ask about that, which I thought was pretty funny. I don't have it with me. I texted my neighbor and asked him, but he hasn't gotten back to me. I'll get that information for sure to you guys on Saturday. But at any rate, so the commercials were pretty good this year. I can't play any of them on here because even with fair use and whatnot, the NFL is a thick old bitch when it comes to using their commercials. Like even doing commentary, like even bigger YouTube channels have a much tougher time, getting away with playing them even with commentary. So I'm certainly not going to try. But at any rate, I thought the Bill Murray commercial, Groundhog Day, was pretty good. I thought that the Jason Momoa one, that was funny. The Sam Elliott, Doritos dance off. I can't remember the other guy, but that was funny. Now, one thing that I have to address here, because I know that some of you guys have been waiting for the Thursday show for me to address this. Some of you guys think I'm crazy. But let me explain something, and this is regarding the Super Bowl halftime show, by the way. Let me just say that I have very mixed emotions on the Super Bowl halftime show. Okay? On the one hand, I'm not a fan of either J-Lo or Shakira musically. Um, Neither of them have ever really been, my taste in music, mainly because I'm a guy, but also, like, I don't really like that pop, like, dance music, that pure pop, basically. It's never been kind of in my wheelhouse. I mean, with the exception of one or two songs, I don't like Maroon 5, or any of like those big pop bands, musically. And I've said for years that I always like it when the Super Bowl has like rock bands in it, just because the Super Bowl kind of seems like one of those events that like just it needs rock and roll, or it needs metal, or it needs something that just kind of has that to it, that only rock and roll, or metal or something like that could provide. A lot of you guys will know what I mean. Some of you guys who are less musically inclined won't. And maybe that's just me being a music snob and a musical boomer, but I don't care. Um, you know, in re- in regards to the whole, racy dancing thing, though, this is what I find hilarious. Kind of is, and this is something I talked about like 2 weeks ago too. Um, you know, just regarding their performance, like obviously I'm a guy and I like attractive women and I like sexy women. And I did not find anything wrong with that halftime show performance. In fact, a lot of like the older guys in my neighborhood, I'm reserved compared to my neighbors. But a lot of my neighbors were disappointed that there wasn't more like a wardrobe malfunction. So I have no problem with like racy dancing, and it was kind of funny for me to see like some of these conservatives pearl clutching on Twitter. Whom I mostly agree with on like other stuff, but this is one of those things like I talked about last week on the show, right? On last week's Thursday podcast, right? There are two kind of extremes, right? There's the there's like there's the far left who just wants trannies and like pure degeneracy. Not even so much trannies, but they want kids being sexualized and you know uh, all that other stuff, like actual degenerate stuff, right? And then there's kind of like the conservative right that's kind of like very prudish on that sort of thing, and they don't like the Super Bowl halftime performance because they thought it was too sexual. Uh, I mean, the left was complaining that it was too sexual, but they thought it was because it was misogynistic or whatever. And here I am, and here are the vast majority of like men in America thinking like, finally, we get what we want. And by the way, like a lot of the complaints on Twitter, I hate to say it, were from women who were complaining of the Super Bowl halftime performance. Yet last year, I didn't hear one of you women complaining about Adam Levine, I think that's the guy from Maroon 5. I didn't know one of you ladies complaining about when he took his shirt off, and pranced around, shirtless on stage with his six pack, and none of the guys were complaining about it either. We were all kind of like, looking around at last year's super party, like, all right, who's the gay guy in here? It's time to find out now. But you know, it didn't bother. So just kind of like again the morality fagging from both sides of the aisle regarding the Super Bowl halftime show was very interesting to say the least. But overall, I thought it was a great game. Like I said, not my taste in music for the Super Bowl halftime show, but it was a very interesting performance. I will say that. Um, and my neighbors are awesome. The food was great, and that's pretty much what matters. As far as what I've been listening to this week, I've really been listening to the Rippingtons, which is a smooth jazz band from the 80s and 90s. They still do stuff. But I've been listening to jazz a lot lately. And I listen to like jazz a lot anyway because I'm a big jazz fan, as most of you guys know. But I've been listening to smooth jazz, which I usually don't do. But I've been listening to it during the day because, I have this new job where I'm typing a lot, IRL, and I just work better with, some like light background music, so that's what I've been listening to. Highly recommend it if you just want some smooth vibes. Um, and yeah, I can't, and like I said, I haven't really been able to watch anything in the last few weeks in terms of, TV and movies just because I've been so busy. Although, did I? No. I thought I had watched something the other night, but it's on my watch list and I haven't gotten around to actually watching it yet. But at any rate, folks, that'll do it for the Thursday podcast. I will be back Saturday night for real this time, 10 p.m. Eastern Time, live here on the YouTube channel. Sundays, obviously, is when the audio will be posted for the audio podcast people. But until then, folks, I want to thank you all for tuning in. From all of us here at NGC Studios, have a good night or good day, depending on when you're listening to this. God save this great nation. God bless America. God, freedom, legacy in that order. And I will see you guys on Saturday evening. Until then, God bless and good night.